Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Robert Barr, and I'm pleased that you're joining me and one another for this streaming Shabbat service. This is a chance for us to pause, to catch our breath, to think about where we've been and where we're going. So let the Sabbath be a time for believing in what could be and seeing with new eyes. In this serious world, let us take ourselves less seriously. In these harsh times, let us listen for a soothing word. While the world around us unfolds in an instant, let us judge each other a little more slowly. Let the Sabbath shine a light into a corner of ourselves where hope is renewed. Let us remember a reason to be joyful, a way to be gentle. Let the Sabbath be a time for opening up. Let us find strength in our dreams and trust in our strength. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam. That's our bricks and mortar congregation here in Loveland, Ohio, part of Greater Cincinnati, and our Jewish community, our online initiative. We've been online for about 14 years now. When we began, people wondered what was the value of being online. We saw value in it. We saw a way to create community using the internet. And of course, during the pandemic, it became even more important. And today, even though we're now gathering back together, we continue to stream services and we're doing hybrid services. The technology has been remarkable. It allows us to know that we're part of something greater than ourselves. But the technology is not the point. The technology isn't the reason that we came together. It's the voice of Judaism that we've been giving expression to here at Congregation Beth Adam for over 40 years. That's our mission. That's our vision. That's our values, to give voice to a bold, dynamic Judaism, a Judaism that recognizes we're not our ancestors. We don't need to mimic what they said or parrot the words they wrote. They created liturgy and a Judaism that was reflective of who they were, of what they understood about the universe in which they lived. We have new knowledge that they never had access to. And it was incumbent upon us to create a Judaism reflective of that. And that's what we've been doing here. A Judaism that understands that we live in a universe that's 14.5 billion years old. They didn't know that. They didn't know that we existed on this tiny speck of dust in this vast universe. We know those things, and our liturgy should be reflective of that knowledge and understanding about the relationship we have with nature and how nature itself functions. That's what we're doing here. That's what you're a part of by joining us for services tonight. Now, what's nice about the technology is you can watch at 7 o'clock if that's convenient for you. If you're in a different time zone, you can watch whenever it's convenient for you. You can time shift if that works, meaning that you can watch it later, because once we stream our service, you can watch it at any time. You can watch it in the archives. It also means I can have conversations with different people and then draw them or put them into the service. I'm going to do that this evening. It means you can chat with one another. I know the folks on bethadam.org are probably chatting right now. It's a community that likes to talk, and that's great. If you want to join them, jump over to bethadam.org, go to our streaming services, and you can find it there. Or you could be on one of our Facebook pages. Glad you're here. If you're on one of our Facebook pages, let us know where you're participating from. And, let other people know that this is something special and that speaks to you. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that we can share this Shabbat together. Now we're going to continue our service with the lighting of the candles. Night seeps up from the ground. Light falls from the stars, distant and icy, ancient beyond all who came before. But the light of the Sabbath is warm. The light of the Sabbath is ours. The light of the Sabbath is of this time, of this place, of lives that know the past only in a dream. As we kindle these lights, we create a place of warmth. As we kindle these lights, we welcome this time for reflection. As we kindle these lights, we stake our claim. And while these lights burn, the time is ours. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. Caught without shelter, immediate shower, nervous attempts to feel connected, pressed into service in a workaday world, made strangers to our own rhythm. Our true medium, not a race against time, but an endless flow of new possibilities. Not a fixed point in the universe after all, but an ongoing discourse between nature and itself. The Sabbath beckons us each week to find our own rhythms, if only for a day, to cherish this moment without thoughts of what's next, to reveal ourselves gleaning the chosen from the imposed, to determine what we want and what we need, and so each week to make ourselves whole, if only for a day. Now we're going to continue our service with a conversation that I had with my brother, Eric Barr. I had this conversation with him when I was up in the mountains of Southern California. Now they've been getting hammered with snow, but when I was out there, the weather was really quite pleasant. It was a conversation we had about what he's been going through and about how his stroke and then a new recent injury really complicated his life and added a wrinkle to an already complicated situation. I'm glad he was willing to share his experience with us. I think we can all learn from what he has to teach. I am so pleased to be here with my brother, Eric. Many of you who have been part of our community for a number of years have met Eric before. You know part of his story. We'll talk about your story as well. He lives up in Southern California in the mountains, and I come out to see you hopefully on a regular basis. Unfortunately, with COVID, we haven't been able to do this nearly as often, but I'm here now, and I'm glad to see you. How you doing?
Well, given all the things that have happened since last time, I'm doing pretty good.
Good. Can you give a quick summary for those people who are just joining us for the very, very first time, who you are, a little bit about your history and your health issues?
My name is Eric Barr. I'm Robert's brother.
That's okay.
I had a stroke in 2013 that destroyed half my brain. It wiped out my left side. It eliminated my ability to speak. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't do anything. It's been almost 9 years since my stroke, and I've been in constant rehab and therapy. And I've done much, much better and gotten much, much better. I do a show about my stroke.
What's it called?
A Piece of My Mind.
Can people access it?
They can at my website, apieceofmymind.net. I write poetry. I'm exercising. I have most of my life back.
Mm-hmm. And you've been writing a lot of,
I've been writing poetry.
But that's not something that you did prior to your stroke. You were never a poet.
No, I was watching a class given by Billy Collins, and he mentioned that writing poetry was a good way to capture moments, to remember moments and feelings and things. And I thought, great, I need to remember things because my memory's not so good. Mm-hmm. So I started writing poetry as a way of capturing things in amber.
Mm-hmm. And you've written a number of poems.
Yes, I have.
You want to share one now?
I'll share one now. When all is said and done comes much too soon. Some days are so short, I have to talk in my sleep and run in my dreams just to keep up. The days too short, the years too few. There's nothing to do but fill each hour and saturate each minute with what gives you joy. Time is running out.
So when did you write that one?
About a year ago. Mm-hmm. And I fell 4 weeks ago. And now it means more to me than ever because time is really running out since I fell.
So, and it was not just a stumble. You want to talk about your fall?
It was enough of a fall that I smacked my head and caused bleeding internally. And I have a subdural hematoma, so a blood clot on the brain, which caused me to lose some of the things I'd regained. My movement became more difficult, speech became more difficult.
Let's look at this cord out here.
So it was kind of a setback for me. Now I know Dr. Naz, my neurotherapist, doesn't like the term setback because that implies a
going backwards.
No, but it's a value judgment.
A value judgment. That's right. You said that last night.
It was a bump in the road, and I tripped on it and cracked my head real good.
Well, and you wound up in the hospital. This was not. This was. It was. You wound up in the hospital for 3 days.
4 days.
4 days. They were doing brain scans. They were worried about the bleed becoming worse, and and you came home, but it really changed coming home again.
Yeah, I was back. I was back in a walker, moving much slower. I was like an old handicapped guy again.
Mm-hmm.
It added years to my life, this hit in the head.
Mm-hmm.
Or it took years off my life.
Well, it made you feel older because of everything. Memory was an issue.
Right.
Your speech was slurred. You couldn't say as focused as you used to be.
Couldn't walk as well. Couldn't move as well. So this poem suddenly means more than when I wrote it.
Because, why so?
Because I know time is running out.
Mm-hmm. So how do you, given that, how do you manage? How do you deal with this bump in the road? Dr. Na says, think of it as a bump in the road versus a setback. How do you deal with that? I mean, the last 4 weeks I was away. I was able to just get here. How have you dealt with that?
That's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not yet really come to terms with dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things that's interesting is I was getting overly confident. I was having such success in my recovery that I thought that I couldn't fall.
Mm.
And I was doing so well, I thought, I got this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on my way back. And success is hard to, failure you can confront, but success is harder to deal with in some ways. So I was feeling very nonchalant and cocky. So when I fell, everything went to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to deal with the fact that I'd fallen back.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I'm dealing with this is trying to recognize what aspects have not been diminished and what areas are still working the way they did.
Mm-hmm.
And in therapy, I can see, even in the last 4 weeks, that I've come a couple of steps forward.
Or you've moved forward. Over the bump. We're going to use Dr. Nas's imagery. You've moved forward.
I passed the bump,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't trip on it the second time.
That's good.
So that my walking is getting a little better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm typing a little better than I was. And again, I was just listening to some of my early podcasts on stroke recovery, and I used to be a real smart guy.
You're still a smart guy.
And I had some good things to say about gratitude and paying attention to what worked instead of what didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And the last 4 weeks, I've been paying attention to what doesn't work.
So you have to go back to what you taught all of us about gratitude.
Right.
I remember you talked about gratitude with us.
Yeah, I've got to go back and listen to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing my show in May, and the other day I said to the therapist, I need to start rehearsing my show. And she said, that might be good for you to rehearse your show, because you'll see where you were and how far you'd come.
Mm-hmm.
And I hadn't thought about that. That's a good thought, Taylor.
That's one of your therapists. You
Right.
work with people. You've been very fortunate. You've had a great team.
I've got a great team.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've written poems since the fall, correct?
Yes.
Do you have one you want to share? Or?
I can share my ICU poem.
Okay. I mean, that's so that also being able to write afterwards speaks to the fact that, you have, you're still able to, you're focusing better. You're able to keep on being creative, and you're working. The hope is that the poems that you've written, the collection, will eventually become part of a book.
Right.
That will be published.
Called Striking Back, Post-Stroke Poetry by Eric Barr.
Mm-hmm. So it's very exciting, and it's exciting. I mean, it's it's a family. It's always sad when I got the phone call that Eric had fallen, hit his head. He was in ICU, and they were really taking care of him. It was disconcerting. We really worried about you both, the whole family.
And the neurosurgeon wanted to keep us longer in ICU, but my doctor and my neurologist and my cardiologist helped convince the neurosurgeon to let us out of the hospital.
Mm-hmm. And you've done fine. You've done well at home. So will you share the poem that you wrote while you were there?
This is a poem I wrote in the hospital. When I got to ICU, the nurse introduced herself as Angelica, and she said, And our charge nurse's name is Heaven. And I thought, oh man, I'm in the wrong place. They took me to the morgue.
They took you. So that, yeah.
So Heaven and Angelica. So I'm there in ICU, which is kind of pressing room, and an ICU room must be a miserable place to die. And I had never really given it a thought, but when Mick was dying, my friend Mick was dying, I knew that he wanted to come home from the hospital and die at home, and I'd never really given it a thought. Mm-hmm. But sitting in that room, staring at the place, I started to think about it. Mm-hmm. So I wrote this. An ICU room must be a miserable place to die. 2 blank monitors staring at you, black doorways to eternity. A third one showing your workings in colorful lines and mechanical beeps. A whiteboard with today's date. Look how far you made it. Click a clock ticking off the seconds left. The nurse is moving constantly to keep you alive. Their smiles and energy high to keep you upbeat. A bad still life of flowers in a vase to be viewed by the stilled life in the bed. 3 boxes of rubber gloves. So everyone, no matter their size, can get their hands on you to take your blood pressure, temperature, and dignity. The monitor's ringing all night. For whom the bell tolls, no surprise, it tolls for you. The blood pressure cuff squeezing you awake at night, like a friend grabbing your arm with a secret, but there is no secret. This is where people come to make their final exits. But I'm going home. I'm the lucky one. My dog is waiting for me, and the bed and the urinal here are unpleasant. Never before has the thought of dying at home been so comforting. Chipper little poem.
I was going to say that a chipper. Be careful! Don't pull your phone cord. Be careful. What? So you really thought you were dying when you were there?
You know, I guess I did. I thought that I might not get out of there. The surgeon was pretty. Didn't make me feel very confident. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I was slipping backwards was evident to me even there. Mm-hmm. And the first time I'd been in ICU rooms during my stroke, I was unconscious. Mm-hmm. So here I was, pretty conscious of my surroundings and what was going on in my body. Mm-hmm. And it felt like, oh man. Mm-hmm.
But yet you found the ability to write this in the face of that. What did writing help you confront it? Did it help you acknowledge what you were feeling? What did it do for you at that moment?
Well, it was interesting. It put me into the moment because I started paying attention to what was around me and what it meant to me and how I could assemble the images to make a meaningful picture. Mm-hmm. So it took my mind off my troubles and put it into an artistic endeavor. Mm-hmm. The line, the blood pressure monitor, squeezing your arm like a friend all along with a secret. It kind of was a nice thought.
Right.
Instead of telling you you're dying.
Right. 4 weeks later, we figure, it's been about 4 weeks. Read that, does it change? Do you change how you feel about reading that poem? Do you feel that?
No, I think I was pretty right on.
You feel right
it's like, oh man.
Do you feel as dire as you did then?
Well, today we've had a good day. I feel pretty good.
Okay.
I go up and down. I have good days and I have bad days. Mm-hmm. Not yet quite confronted my emotional roller coaster and how to keep it a little more level.
No, it is. I mean, it is. I mean, there's the things that are thrown at you, and that you were able to cope with. Managing after the stroke and recovering and doing the show and writing poetry and getting really accolades for your poems. I think one of your poems was published as an emerging poet in California. Was it
Best emerging poet in California.
Really?
Yeah, and I was 70 when I wrote it, I think. So to be emerging when I was 70 was pretty good because
You were an overnight success.
the last thing I'm doing is emerging. I'm submerging, I think.
Mm-hmm. So that you made all that progress and then hit this this really bump in the road that you tripped over, and then sort of now slowly rebuilding back because part of it also is your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that you were talking about being maybe cocky before, self-assured, and losing that, but that also allowed you to engage in things in a particular way.
And it's weird because when we came to pick you up and I got out of the car, I could feel how badly I was moving.
Mm-hmm.
And then I began to see through your eyes how badly I was moving. I could see you seeing, oh man, he's a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Which didn't help. And it was not your fault. It was just I knew what you were seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you just put up this little thing on the wall,
mm-hmm.
and I can't help because I'm not very stable.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that stuff is falling to Karen again just is very distressing.
Right. Right.
So I have ups and downs.
Mm-hmm. I think I think that's a challenge that everyone faces. I mean, yours is particular to you, and the strokes and the illness. I think some of us, and I think ups and downs. It's like skiing, right? So there are mountains that are really difficult, strokes, falling, and brain bleeds, and some of us are on a simple run, but we think the little bumps in the road are massive, when in fact they're really pretty small. I think we measure them against our own selves.
Right. Before I was ill, I had bumps in the road. It didn't affect me quite as much.
Mm-hmm. But you might have thought
at the time I might have thought, oh man, this is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm confronting a deal.
Right.
And a half.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's different.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're facing trouble, deal with it. Look at it honestly and assess it in context. Don't overinflate it, don't underinflate it,
mm-hmm.
but look at it as it really is. And that's the poetry, in a way, allows me to look away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And by seeing it out of the side of my eye, rather than directly on,
mm-hmm.
I had a better vision of it.
Well, it's just sort of interesting because I remember, we see better the sky when we look from the side, right? We see dimmer things. We see because we see our black and white. I can't remember if it's rods or cones, but we see oftentimes out of the side of our eye more than we can see directly on because of the way the light hits it.
Right. So in a way, getting involved in an artistic activity when I write, or when I spend time at the computer, my focus or my attention is focused there, and suddenly what's happening here,
mm-hmm.
I get a better image of,
mm-hmm.
or I get a more realistic image,
right.
rather than when I'm staring at myself and going, oh,
F.
Life is over.
Right.
So if I look over there and I kind of catch a glimpse of myself, it's like,
mm-hmm.
oh, he's not quite that bad. He's guilty, but he's not.
Right. I mean, you're still. I mean, to me, coming out here not knowing what to see. Your walking was bad, and seeing you on a walker again was like disconcerting. But sitting and having a conversation like this, seeing that you're still. Right.
Wow.
You're
right there.
You're right there. You're right. Yeah. So there are things that physically
sharp as a tack.
Sharp as a tack. Be careful. There actually is a tack right there. But the reality is, you still have that intellectual quality. It may not be exactly the same as you had before. There may be your memory may not be as crisp, or
and words are getting caught in my throat and into my mouth.
Mm-hmm. Is that
articulation problems?
Mm-hmm. Right. But you worked on. I mean, right before we started, this, you started, practicing Sonnet 29, which is something that you read repeatedly. I remember when you were in Stanford in the hospital, you wanted to test your memory, you wanted to test your ability to speak, and you worked through it. I mean, I think that to me, and I hope for those of you who've seen Eric over the number of years, has been impressive. Your work ethic. Your work changed. The focus has changed. You worked on yourself a lot to get past.
I think that's a good thing, but sometimes I get so focused on I got to do this and I got to do this that I feel like, oh man, how can I ever do all this stuff? I feel like, oh, lighten up.
Give
Lighten
yourself
up.
a break. I mean,
Yeah.
be a little kinder to yourself. Give yourself a little bit of grace.
Myself like I would treat a friend.
Right. Absolutely. And the other thing too, and I genuinely mean this, that you're willing to be on camera, to be part of a streaming service, again, to share your ups and downs, to be open about the bumps in the road, and these are really big bumps in the road. I appreciate Dr. Nas's imagery, but it was what you've gone through from the strokes back at 9 years ago, and recovery and all that work, and then you shared your show, you performed it at Beth Adam, you performed it around in LA, in Stanford, and things like that. That you're willing to be open about it. I think that's part. You've been an incredible teacher. That you're willing to continue to be open and share who you are.
That feels like one of my purposes is to teach. That gives me a reason to kind of move forward. Even the poetry is teaching.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think it really gives us insights, and it helps us, I hope, all of us to think and to consider our own sort of time and how we
keep moving and don't fall down. That's the motto.
Well, we're going to end with that. Keep moving, don't fall down. Keep moving, don't fall down.
Okay.
I really appreciate Eric being willing to open it up